It was a dark and stormy morning. And it was also Easter. Yeah, I just posted an Easter video, but guess what? This is round 2. The Easter, the sequel. The second coming of Easter. A sequel because this week I went to a Greek Orthodox church, finally, and went to their Easter service.
These are not the words of Father Paul, but they are the words of St. Paul.
Fun fact, the Orthodox celebrate Easter about a month after Catholics and Protestants do. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jared, I'm an atheist, blah, blah, blah. I went to a church this week.
It's time for church.
So I'm going to set the stage for this by saying that I knew that Orthodox Easter was coming up, and so I was sitting on my couch like a good little doodad, and it was like 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I realized, oh sweet, tomorrow is Orthodox Easter. I'm gonna go to an Orthodox church. I'm gonna see their whole huge Eucharistic celebration. And darn it, you had to be cool and have like a, 10 p.m. to midnight mass. That's how they do their Easter. They have like a cool Eucharistic celebration that takes place like literally on the midnight of their Easter. So I'm sitting there on my couch and I'm reading this on my laptop and I'm like, damn it. The service is happening right now. I wish I could have just looked up the times like, 45 minutes earlier, because I would have made my way out there.
You're too late.
So I didn't go to the bona fide midnight Pascha service. This was kind of the trimmed down diet Pascha service, if you will, that took place Sunday morning. So maybe there's a couple of caveats there. There's going to probably be substantially fewer people because most of them were at the Pascha service at midnight. Maybe not most, but a decent chunk. Probably the priest and the clergy are gonna be a little tired because they had to be at the previous one as well. So I was coming in with a lot of grace already for this church, and to my great delight, it was really good. It was really good. I'm just gonna say this off the bat. I don't do a ton of research for these. I think it's more fun when I just kind of give my off-the-cuff remarks of, what a stupid atheist thinks when he stumbles into a church, and especially a church congregation that he knows nothing about. But today, I'm even more ignorant because the United House of Prayer saga, if you saw that video.
Say Precious Daddy Cunningham! Oh, Precious Daddy Cunningham!
It's still ongoing, and my entire world has been wrapped up in trying to understand the mystery of Sweet Daddy. To be continued. All that being said, I'm coming in even more ignorant than usual. Please bear with me. So, this week I had the pleasure of going to Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church. Now, what I said at the beginning of the video was true. It was a dark and stormy morning, and in spite of that, and in spite of a lot of these people staying up super late to view the midnight Pascha service, there were a lot of people there, and it was a very warm environment. Unless you're living under a rock, Orthodoxy is kind of experiencing a boom right now, especially among young men. It's seen as very refined, it's very sophisticated theologically, and it's got, a very rich, beautiful tradition. And I think that was expressed here. A lot of the dudes that I saw in this service were white dudes who just kind of looked like theology nerds. And then in addition to the theology nerds, there were a lot of Greek people, obviously, and a lot of, families. This was a really healthy seeming church because it seemed very intergenerational, which is always a good sign. So I pull up, it's raining, whip out my umbrella, walk up to the church. I walk through the front door and enter the foyer, I don't know. And they have kind of like a visitor's booth there. And most of the time when you walk into like a Baptist church and they have a visitor's booth, it's like, why, what do I need to know? But here, it was kind of like, oh, this is a foreign culture to me. I'm just gonna walk up to him and tell him, hey, I've never done this before, what do I do? And I'm not gonna lie, it's one of my favorite kind of litmus tests to kind of softball Christians to see, how they respond to it. And these guys did exceptionally well. The young man at the front, I wanna say his name was Paul. Good going, Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul.
He's like, oh, dude, absolutely. Here, let me show you around. So he gives me like a brief tour of the sanctuary and the little prayer room that you go into beforehand. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. I haven't been researching all the terminology of Orthodox cathedrals and churches. I've been studying a lot on Sweet Daddy. I know a lot about Sweet Daddy. I know very little about this Greek Orthodox church, please forgive me. Paul shows me around. I'm just gonna keep calling him Paul. We're calling him Paul. Paul shows me around. He's like, oh yes, sir. You take one of these candles and you put it in the sand. I don't know what that represents. Hopefully somebody will tell me. And then you get a different candle and you hold it throughout the service. And I'm like, cool, thank you so much. This is really cool. He explained a little bit of the iconography to me. He was like, yeah, you'll see a lot of people crossing themselves, a lot of people kissing icons. And it was just a very good, easy introduction. And it's like, yeah, we're so glad you're here. And I will say that that's kind of like an easy benefit that the Orthodox have with their, revival going on right now, is that like you get to have those kinds of conversations. Like, hey, let me explain this whole new culture to you. Like, yes, you know Jesus, but let me explain this rich history, this rich liturgy. And I think, being an outsider, it feels warmer kind of being introduced and invited to experience a new culture. Whereas when you go to a non-denominational church, it's just kind of like, yeah, the shindig, praise team comes on at 10, sermons at 10:30, we'll be out by noon. So, just being an outsider here is kind of special. So I take my seat in the pew and the congregation is quickly filling up. There's a lot of babies, there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of elderly people, and it's pretty mixed racially, which is always a good sign. There's a caveat there because, and I don't know the history of like the state churches versus the general Orthodox churches. Like in Catholicism, you got Catholicism. But then in Orthodoxy, you have Coptic Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. And I don't really know the politics between these. Please litter my comment sections and explain it to me because I'm ignorant. But I do remember going to a Serbian Orthodox church once, and it was a little bit too Serbian for me. I'll revisit that in a minute, but this didn't seem to be, overwhelmingly Greek.
Look at this rash.
Put some Windex.
Oh, God, please.
The emphasis was much more on Orthodoxy rather than being Greek, which is good. So I'm sitting in my seat, holding the candle, and then the priest comes with his holy entourage, and they're chanting, presumably in Greek, I think, and they're holding a lit candle. And so pretty quickly, somebody takes their candle and lights my candle. And then I'm standing around other people and they look to me and I light their candle. And then before you know it, everyone in the room is holding a lit candle. Definitely a safety hazard, but screw it. And even something like as easy and subtle as that was really beautiful. Like, I don't know, it's clear that the bar is like dirt low when it comes to like meaningful ceremony here in the States, because even something as simple as that was just profound. So this Pascha service, Pascha is the Aramaic word for sacrificial lamb or for Passover. I'm comparing this Easter service to the Easter service that I had at the Catholic Church about a month ago. Check out that video if you haven't yet.
Ooh, I slept in my car for this.
And this was head and shoulders above that service. Now, there's a couple of caveats there because this service, for one, this building didn't have all of the bells and whistles and the iconography that very, very, very old cathedral did have. I should say very old. It's an American cathedral. It doesn't get three varies. And then for the Catholic service that I went to, I think the priest was tired, or, that he just had kind of a sullen temperament. And I think that there were other bigger, more impressive, maybe more passionate ceremonies that took place there. But just comparing what I personally experienced, this was so much more beautiful and so much more meaningful. At one point, everyone was chanting in Greek, presumably, but I just remember the priest presumably saying something like, Christ is risen, and everyone chanting in unison, he is risen indeed. And it felt authoritative. It was like, it gave me chills. It was beautiful. And so I don't know how common this is in Pascha services or other services in Greek Orthodox churches, but they were reading from a passage in maybe 1 John, and they did an interesting thing where they took that passage in 1 John and they read it in several different languages. I want to say it was maybe like 12 different languages. So, first they read the passage in English, then they read it in Greek, then they read it in Koine Greek, then they read it in Russian and Serbian and Chinese and Spanish and French, and it was really cool. One of my favorite early Christian writings outside of the New Testament is a document called the Epistle to Diognetus. I have a song called The Soul and the Body, which was largely inspired by this document. But it's got this line in here that I always just really thought was beautiful. It says, "For the Christians are distinguished from other men neither by country nor language, nor the customs they observe. For they neither inhabit cities of their own, nor employ a particular form of speech, nor lead a life which is marked out by any singularity. The course of conduct which they follow has not been devised by any speculation or deliberation of inquisitive men." And then further on it reads, "They have a common table, but not a common bed. They are in the flesh, but they do not live after the flesh. They pass their days on earth, but they are citizens of heaven." Unity beyond borders and languages is something that should be celebrated. The music was really cool. The chanting was awesome. I'm gonna kind of truncate this one because I gotta go. But I can't remember all the details of the pastor's sermon, but the thing that just really stuck out to me was he was really, really warm. He seemed very invested in the well-being of these people. And you know, everyone walked up to him after the service to get a blessing and an Easter egg, like a hard-boiled, dyed red Easter egg. I don't know how common that is, but and he just had this really warm smile. And again, that's not fair to, you know, give this church a pass because this individual priest was smiley, because I've also seen pastors and priests from all stripes and denominations who are both really happy and really sappy. So this isn't a pro or a knock against this denomination, but I mean, it just kind of warms your heart to see that, like, yeah, I think this is a good place. Now, all that being said, I spent about 3 hours here. You know, these audits, they're not meant to be a comprehensive gauge of how a church is doing. I have a very limited window whenever I go into one of these churches. I might walk into a church and think that it's, you know, the bee's knees and that, wow, they are doing something right here, only for them to have a pedophile scandal that's being buried under the rug. Conversely, I might go to a church and blast it to hell, and only to later realize that, oh, well, the reason why the pastor's sermon sucked was because he's dying of cancer. There's a lot of things that I don't know going into these churches. I come, I give my hot takes, but take it with a grain of salt, man. I'm just learning. But with all that being said, it's Easter, and I'm gonna give this church a 5-star review because they were really warm and nice, and it was a beautiful ceremony. So, my name is Jared. I'm an atheist. Get out of here and go to church.